Hey guys, a while back I made a best and worst defenders video which came out shortly before the Skull Rain DLC, but I never made a best and worst attackers video, so I thought now that all the new operators are out, it'd be a good time to make a video for the attackers. In this video there'll be 3 categories, gold, silver and bronze. Please bear in mind that this is a completely subjective video, but it also is intended to help people decide on which order to buy new operators, since there are actually new players picking up the game even now towards a year into its life. I guess this is also a way to help you understand the attackers just a little bit better, but without further ado, let's get into it. Let's kick it off with the gold tier, shall we? Like I said, these are the best operators and you should have at least 1 or 2 of these operators in your team at all times. I forgot to mention that I'll be mentioning ways that I think are best to use the operators and what operators they best combo with, so you better understand the reasoning behind my picks. First up is Thermite, of course. It's a no-brainer. Thermite has 2 of the best guns and most useful gadget in the game. I'm aware that Barna is now a thing, but she's in no way a replacement to Thermite. If you are new to the game, Thermite can open up reinforced walls with his exothermic charges, but bear in mind he only has 2 of them. He is best used when accompanied by Thatcher, who has an EMP grenade as a gadget, which he can use to destroy Mute's jammers and Bandit's batteries, which are used to counter Thermite's gadget. As well as exothermic charges, he has a claymore, which he can use to cover his flank, and smoke grenade, which he can use as cover when planting the bomb or to safely enter a room. I honestly would pick claymores as smoke grenades tend to be very inconsistent and it's usually a dead giveaway for when somebody's planting a bomb. Next up in the gold tier is Thatcher, and the reason for this is because I feel that in most situations you can't have Thermite without Thatcher, and same goes the other way around. And that's because Thatcher makes Thermite's job so much easier. Like I mentioned earlier, Thatcher is a direct counter to Mute and Bandit, as well as other operators. As well as his gadget, his guns are really strong, especially the L85 with an ACOG. It hits hard and has relatively low recoil. Like Thermite, he also has a claymore, which like I said earlier, is great for covering your flank. And flashbangs for if you want to play a little bit more aggressively, which can work in conjunction with his shotgun, which makes him a very versatile character, which is why I've put him in the gold tier. In third place is Ash. She's incredibly mobile because she has 3 speed and 1 armor. She has amazing weapons at very little recoil, so both are viable depending on which one you want to use. Ash is the operator that you want to use if you want to rush. You can sprint straight towards the objective room at full speed, use the gadget from a distance and rush straight into the objective room. She is perfect for surprise attacks, and along with her smoke grenades, she can be very good at grabbing the hostage quickly and for getting the bomb down and planted. She really doesn't have a counter. Capcan's traps can be quite good at catching you off guard if you're not careful, and barbed wire can be a pain when you're trying to push the objective room quickly. Keep in mind that Yeager's ADSs can stop your grenade launcher, and a shield with one of those bandit batteries attached to it will destroy her gadget's little grenade if it impacts it directly. And lastly in the gold tier is Blackbeard. I really dislike Blackbeard, so putting him here felt wrong for me, but I can't deny how good he is, but he is also insanely cheap. He isn't a must-have, but he's one of the best for the reason that he can't be shot in the head. Of course on the sides and behind he can, but because of his weapon shield, he can't be shot directly in the face. So Blackbeard's presence alone when stood at a window can be enough to keep defenders at bay, and combined with his weapons that are insanely powerful, he is borderline overpowered. You do not want to peek Blackbeard, ever. You will lose 95% of the time. There really isn't any counter to Blackbeard other than the timer. I know this sounds weird because everyone is against the timer when you're on attack, but you will not believe the amount of times I've seen someone lose the round because they got so caught up with standing outside of a window trying to get a kill. So as a suggestion, keep your eye on the timer, because if you're the last guy left and you need to get to the objective room within 30 seconds or so, you will not make it. Up next is the silver tier. So to start us off is Barna. Now there's going to be a lot of people that moan at me because she's similar to Thermite, but she's not a replacement to Thermite, and I honestly don't think she's top tier despite her gadget. Barna I'd say is best comboed with Thermite, Thatcher and Blackbeard. Thatcher for obvious reasons, Blackbeard because she can open up small holes that you can peek through, and lastly Thermite because if combined with Thermite on some rooms, for example kitchen on Cafe Dostoevsky, you could do a 2-pronged attack and pinch them by having Thermite go around the back and open a hole in Meat Locker and push through that way, and have Barna open holes to peek through from Bakery, so you can really pinch the enemy. This has worked most times that when my teams tried to do it, and would say it works best when accompanied by these 3 operators. I for one am not a massive fan of her assault rifle. It has some odd recoil that bubbles about, sort of like the UMP, and it's a bit too much for me, and the magazine size is tiny, but her shotgun be quite fun to use if you want to play a bit more aggressively. She is, like Thermite, countered by Mute and Bandit, so there isn't much else to say about that, but the enemy team can shoot little pellets, the little pellets that you fire on the wall using a gadget if you're not careful, so she can be countered in that way as well. In second place is Sledge, and I really wanted to put him in the gold tier because I love playing as Sledge and have done since the beginning of Season 1. Sledge is a medium speed and medium armor operator, so he can take a bit of punishment, but the main benefit to using him is his gadget, which you can use in a similar style to Buck's. As Sledge, you can go above the objective room or to a wall, The best example is on Consulate when they're defending archives and just start smashing the floor apart above them, pushing them into open areas and distracting them. That's how I'd say Sledge is best used, as a way to harass them, and obviously he's good for countering castle. His guns are also very strong, especially his assault rifle, which has little recoil and decent damage. He also has a shotgun, which on Favela is very fun to rush with. Just a quick tip, which works for me when I'm using Sledge and you're rushing, it's best to smash the lower part of the wall so you can just pass through crouching as you swing. I find having to vault through walls kind of gets me killed more often than not because you're a bit more exposed. Next is Buck. Now, it took me a really long time to get used to Buck. His skeleton key has been messed up way too many times from patch to patch, and his gun kicks a ridiculous amount, so much that I would just stay away from him. Why use Buck when you've got Sledge? His gun's more accurate and his gadget is pretty similar in the sense that you use it to open up holes and sightlines. But after some time I started to really like playing as him. His assault rifle is amazing despite its incredibly high recoil. If you can get used to that, then you'll have no problem ripping through enemies. His skeleton key can double up as a last resort in close range, but primarily you want to use it to open up lines of sight for your team and give your enemies something to think about. And you can use it as a tool to rush by opening up hatches and quickly dropping through them. What I like to do as Buck is find the enemy team, if they have a bandit, going up above them, because half the time a bandit is doing a bandit trick and sitting next to the wall, and what you do is you go up above them and open up holes above their head and quickly kill him, or at least take out the batteries he's planted. In 4th place is Twitch. Now, I know people that would put her in the gold tier just because of her FAMAS alone, but I myself think she's a mid-tier operator because all she really has going for her is her weapons. Her drone could be very useful to harass the enemy with and can serve as a distraction, but the main perk to using it is taking out the enemy's cameras and gadgets in the preparation phase and later on in the rounds. Her F2 is amazing despite its high recoil. If you can get used to that, then you're set because it's a headshot machine. Just keep in mind how often you're firing because the mag runs dry fast. Her DMR, the 417, is actually my preferred weapon of choice when playing as Twitch. When used with a muzzle brake, foregrip and ACOG, it can be very deadly, and I much prefer a slower, less aggressive playstyle. Unfortunately for Twitch, she's easily countered by mute jammers, barbed wire that has a battery attached to it, or just being shot at, which is why she's in the silver tier. So Capitao is my 5th pick for the silver tier. He's a high speed operator with low armor, which means he's very good for aggressive play. His gadget is a crossbow that fires 2 types of bolt, one being an incendiary and the other is a smoke bolt. The incendiary is very good for area denial and does insane damage to enemies, killing them very quickly if they don't move out the way, which is just a no-brainer. It's a very good counter to roamers and teams that like to sit in corners of rooms and behind shields. I would suggest that you don't use it to get kills, but prevent anyone trying to get into the objective room when you are planting the bomb or capturing the objective on secure area. His smoke bolt is essentially a projectile smoke grenade. The area of effect isn't as large as a smoke grenade, I don't think, but can be good for concealing your teammates when they go for the bomb plant, or if you just want to break from cover. Both of his guns are good, one being an assault rifle, which I'd say is better than the LMG, but the LMG is good for ripping through walls due to the most recent patch. Capitao also has grenades and flashbangs, which I'd say, like earlier, makes him great for flashing out enemies and area denial. In 6th is Fuse, the hostage killer, the team killer, whatever you want to call him. Fuse, like all other Russian operators apart from Glaz, is a 3 armor and 1 speed operator, which means he can take a ton of punishment, and with his LMG, deal out tons of punishment back at the enemy. Fuse is best to clear rooms with, using his cluster charge of course, and sometimes you'll get a kill, but it's easy to dodge because of the sound, and when being planted it makes such a loud noise that if you do have a good headset or your hearing is really good, you can pinpoint where it is on the window or surface and you can shoot it before it even detonates. He also has a shield that if you want to be cheeky with, you can bait roamers with into your cluster charge. Last but not least is IQ. Now I did want to put her in the bronze tier, I'm not going to lie. So she's last on the silver tier because she's like floating in between the two. But all of her guns are so good, and she can counter pulse as well as see enemy gadgets with her gadget, and with every new operator that comes out for the defenders, she pretty much receives a buff. But other than for finding pulse and locating the yokai drone, she doesn't really do too much. She can be used aggressively due to her speed and powerful weapons, but then again so can Ash and Twitch to an extent. I know she can also be used to find Valkyrie's cams and the yokai drone, but they're usually really easy to find, and unless you're against a team that's on mics, your enemy more often than not mark you, revealing the cameras. Despite her gadget, her AUG is insanely good and accurate, and it hits like a bloody truck, doing an insane amount of damage, where on the other hand, you have a commando which is accurate and could be good for picking off headshots. She does have an LMG which can be used to tear through walls with its large magazine, but I'd advise you use the AUG or the commando. So now we move on to the bronze tier, which is what I consider to be the worst operators, but can be some of the most fun to play with. First up is Glaz. Unfortunately, he's not good enough to be placed in the silver tier because of the way the game works. If there wasn't a one-shot headshot mechanic in this game and the defenders couldn't use ACOG sights, I'd imagine he'd be much better. It's not to say that he's bad. His gun does hit like a truck, like it drops enemies in 2 to 3 shots, but so does Twitch's DMR, which can be fired faster and has less recoil. On top of that, his gadget is a scope, like, come on. Glaz can be a lot of fun to use aggressively if you're accurate or to keep the enemy in place. Similar to Blackbeard, if you know Glaz is watching the window but you can't pinpoint him, that could be enough to prevent them from moving. He's best used, in my opinion, on the map plane since you can shoot for the windows and there's tons of line of sights. Also, keep in mind you can shoot through castle doors. Lastly is all of the shield operators. Because I have the same thing to virtually say about all of them, I'm just going to bundle them together and it just saves me repeating myself. They aren't bad, but because of the hit detection, Blitz's weird hitbox and massive head, the fact that every defender with a nitro cell is an Olympic shot put thrower, they're at the point where they're really awkward to use, and for that reason they're in the bronze tier. In ranked they're just completely unviable, and if you're trying to win you don't want to take one of these operators. Other than for Montagna or on bomb, if you know someone who's good with him, you can do a very good job of defending a teammate whilst they're planting the bomb. And from my own experience playing as Echo, the Yokai drone can't penetrate Montagna's shield, which is indirectly a buff to him of sorts. But like I said, these operators aren't necessarily bad, but because of how the game works right now, they don't work very well, which is unfortunate. In an ideal world, all operators would be viable, but saying that, all of these operators are in bronze tier, can be fun to use, and sometimes I'll go into casual just to mess around with them. But that's all for today, guys. What do you think about my list? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And if you did, why? It's good to hear what you think down in the comments down below. I will leave an annotation to my old Defenders video that I made back in, I'm going to say, June, but it's lacking Caveira and Echo in the video because they weren't out at the time. But my opinions really haven't changed on the operators, so if you're interested in hearing what I've got to say, then have a look at the video. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, please leave a thumbs up, and if you didn't, leave a thumbs down. Subscribe for more Rainbow Six Siege content, and I'll see you in the next one.